later that same day, but they were morphing so quickly in an effort to evade the antivirus, the firewalls, the security protocols out there. This is kind of that good news, bad news. Good news is a lot more of the internet traffic is actually encrypted. Bad news is the bad guys are now using that to get around various aspects. So if you look at in the industry, one of the most effective ways to prevent malware from entering your network is firewalls. That's what they're for. The bad news is only about 5% of firewalls are deployed in a way that actually inspect encrypted traffic. Many of those might not make it through, but I'm really targeting trying to get that one to make it through to infect you and therefore propagate. We're about 4 months from there, so it'll be interesting to watch over the next few months how those vulnerabilities become weaponized. So, going into a little bit more about the SonicWall network. And this is where the data comes from. Where's the foundation of this report? It comes from over 1 million sensors in over 200 countries. They're on 24/7. It's always online. You'll see some other interesting things that we recently launched around your access to this type of information. The more you can protect yourself from it. So if you see the threat, you have the ability to react. Ransomware. To me, this is kind of humorous because I believe the bad guys kind of did it to themselves. You know, because when does ransomware work? When does holding something to ransom work? It's when, if you pay the ransom, you actually get back what's being held. Ransomware as a service. And it's where they're actually trying to become reputable criminals. In other words, if you get infected by brand name ransomware, they are guaranteeing that if you pay the ransom, you'll actually get your data back. It's predominantly driven. For a long time, the ransomware targeters were targeting people where they could get $10, $20, $50,000 payouts. Now they're targeting where I want $50 or $100 or $500 payouts. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It keeps your information private on the way from point A to point B, but it doesn't mean what's being transmitted is actually safe. The best way to kind of visualize how pervasive encryption is just go out to Google. Go out to Google, do a search. Notice that when that search results are reported back to you, the results are actually encrypted. So it's HTTPS when it comes back to you. The danger of that is the vast majority of firewalls, as they're deployed, don't inspect it. Once it's encrypted, unless you set it up with the foundation of malware that anybody else can use to very quickly write new versions of malware. So you don't even have to be a super programmer that knows how to address memory outside of what you're supposed to, because other people figured that out for you. Exploit kits are simply a way to add scale to taking advantage of vulnerabilities within that criminal ecosystem. The good news is there was a significant decline in the number of exploit kits out there. And what's interesting is you look at them shift from, a huge number were targeted at Adobe Flash. Shift, it's this kind of, I don't know if you have the game, but that game of whack-a-mole that you play, where you hit one and it pops up, that's basically what's going on, is they simply shift where they're targeting to go after. And those exploit kit writers, study that industry. This is actually kind of interesting. There's a lot of things up here to where they captured and arrested some very high-profile criminal cases. Like I said before, my favorite one was the guy who discovered the kill switch to WannaCry, happened to be the same guy that wrote the Kronos malware that was designed to infiltrate the banking system. But in general, the law enforcement is getting much better at tracing it down. But in turn, the criminals are getting equally good at those evasion techniques. Kind of what we've seen them do over the last year. So when you look at how most anti-malware, antivirus works, or really even most firewalls, they work based on signatures on a much more rapid pace. they know that once one place figures it out, everywhere's going to know about it super quick, so they change it for the next time. Many of these are being changed hourly. And we'll talk a little bit on what technologies are available to stop that at the end, but that's what we're watching going on. And it's really the criminal industry figuring out ways to penetrate the networks. It's being transmitted deliberately under encryption. Now it hit 5%. And that was almost all in the latter half of the year, or some portion of that will get detected. Sometimes they actually do it to notice whether they're in a sandbox or not, to know whether or not they need to evade the security measures of that environment. So they'll deliberately, it's like having that tip of a spear where they know it's going to get caught, but the act of it getting caught actually releases something else designed to evade the security infrastructure that everyone's probably aware of by this point, and it's the idea that there's vulnerabilities between processor and memory. Historically, all the vulnerabilities were really kind of either on hard drive or after in memory, trying to hit extended memory in that aspect. The Spectre and Meltdown, the vulnerability is actually at time of processor execution.